to Day Drinking with Authors. I'm Molly Fader. This is the interview series where I pick a book and the author picks a drink, and we discuss both. And tonight, I'm so happy to have back Toronto author Farah Heron. I got distracted by something that was on my computer. Toronto author Farah Heron, who is here to talk about her latest rom-com, Kamila Knows Best. And it's one of those like rom-coms that's actually my real, like, it's my absolute catnip, because there's like serious, almost sad things that happen. And I like a little, the heartache makes the funny parts funnier to me. So if that's your cup of tea, absolutely pick up this book. I'm going to read the back cover copy because my mother likes that. And my mom, you'd like this book quite a bit. So go grab it. Jane Austen's Emma goes Bollywood in this delightful retelling from the highly acclaimed author of Accidentally Engaged. Kamila Hussein's life might not be perfect, but woof, it's close. She lives a life of comfort filled with her elaborate Bollywood movie parties, a dog with more Instagram followers than most reality stars, a job she loves, and an endless array of friends who clearly need her help finding love. In fact, Kamila is so busy with her friends' love lives, she has hardly given any thought to her own. Fortunately, Kamila has Rohan Nasir, a longtime friend of the family. He's hugely successful with a deliciously lean, firm body of a rock climber. Only lately, Kamila's harmless flirting with Rohan is making her insides do a little baranga dance. But between planning the local shelter's puppy prom, throwing a huge work event, and proving to everyone that she's got it all figured out, Kamila isn't letting herself get distracted until her secret nemesis returns to town with an eye for Rohan. Suddenly, it seems like the more Kamila tries to plan, the more things are starting to unravel, and her perfectly ordered life is about to be turned upside down. Let's bring in Farah. Hello.
Hi.
How you doing?
I'm so happy to be here. I'm great. I'm doing great.
Are you happy to be here? We were going to have a really elaborate drink, but then thanks for your patience. I got a terrible migraine last week and I had to cancel. So for everyone who's like, where was the interview last week? It was because I had to lie down in a very dark room. But this drink that I don't have the ingredients. Last week I made the star anise syrup. Oh, you did make it.
I did make it, but not really. The syrup I still had in the fridge from the last time I made it. So it's some like it's orange juice instead of peach. Like there's some substitutions here.
I made that star anise syrup and I drank it with everything. And my kids drank it with everything. Like it is. In an interview years ago with Sonali Dev, she did a cinnamon spiced syrup and it has that same warmth. And you drink it with everything. Mick was like, can I put this in milk? And I was like, yeah, I think you can.
Did it taste good in milk?
It was good in milk.
Yeah.
It was good in milk. It was like a spiced milk. He drank it cold because he's weird, but I think if you warmed it up, it would be amazing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that would be really good. I'm thinking like a latte too, maybe coffee.
Absolutely. It is one of those syrups that if you make it, you want to have it around for a while. But if you want the recipe for this delicious drink that we're talking about, it's in the back of the book with a whole bunch of other recipes.
It's actually, this is my thing now. Apparently I'm the recipe person. The other recipe in there is biryani, which they eat a lot of in the book. But biryani is very, very complicated to make. So it looks like there's a ton of recipes in there, but you're just making the one dish because that's how many steps it is.
There's like 40 ingredients. Yeah, it is really complicated.
And that's using a spice mix. That's not even like fully from scratch.
In the book, she has a weekly party, which we'll get to the pandemic. You were writing this in the pandemic, but she has a weekly party where they have biryani and they watch a Bollywood movie. Is that biryani place based on something near you? There's like 40 different kinds.
So there's tons of biryani places near me where I live. And I got biryani for release day and they had 51 different kinds at that one. But I don't know if that's like, I don't know if I was imagining that she was getting them all from the same place, but I could tell you where you could get any different kind of biryani in Toronto. And so that's the thing. If you like biryani, there's tons of different choices.
And it's funny to think about you writing this book because she has a weekly party. And maybe before the pandemic, you could kind of imagine that. But now post-pandemic, a weekly party. mean, only the young, huh?
Right. I mean, when I was no, I was younger. I remember having my friends over to watch like Buffy or something every week, and I'm aging myself. But yeah, so but I wouldn't go through all that trouble. It would just be the same friends would come over, and we'd maybe get takeout and watch a movie. But I can't imagine like doing a whole big theme thing every week.
Yeah, and it plays into her character so well that,
Yeah.
she's just a little extra. She's
She's
just a little over the
she's just a
top,
little,
a
everything is
tad.
just a little overdone.
Yeah. So you can't quite imagine this, but it's what she imagines, and that makes it perfect for the character.
Hmm.
You had said in your author note, that you wrote this book during the pandemic, and that you were glad to have like a happy memory from it, like a solid happy, like it was such a dark time for everybody, but you have this really, like, look at that cover, you have this bright, cheerful, happy book as like a reminder. And I never really thought of it that way. All of the authors that I've been interviewing who have written these books during the pandemic, now that we're on the other side of it, you have something good.
Yeah. Yeah. And I wrote it at the scariest part of the pandemic, the beginning when we had no idea what was going on. Not like maybe the last time I actually went out before the pandemic, I went to an animal shelter in Toronto, and I was like, this is research. And so I saw all the puppies, and then we went to a brewery and we had some drinks. And then that was the last time I went anywhere. And it was very strange that then I had to write this story about people getting together in restaurants
Every
and
week.
every week. Yeah. And I hadn't seen anyone. So
Yeah.
it was nice to be able to escape into that kind of story when we didn't know what was going on, but it also felt very surreal.
Was it hard to write kind of comedy, to write lighter things during that time? Or, I mean, that didn't, it would have been hard to write anything, and that was just what you were writing?
Yeah, I think it would have been hard to write anything. It was hard to write comedy. It was hard, especially since this was a retelling. It was hard for me to kind of really a retelling. I thought it would be easier. It's not easier. It takes a lot of thinking, and it was hard for me to kind of turn off all the bad stuff that was going on in the world to just think it instead of
Yeah.
just writing whatever I want. So there's a lot more planning, and
Okay,
I
so
found that
talk
very
about that.
difficult.
So, I mean, my initial question about the retelling was going to be like, what, like right now, retellings they're super popular, traditional indie romance across the board. What is it about right now, and how, and tell us how, what parts of it were hard to put together?
I don't know why they're popular right now. That's a good question. I mean, obviously that's kind of why I did it because I kept seeing other people doing them, and I've always wanted to write an Austen retelling, um, but it was harder than I thought. I thought it would be easy because you don't have to come up with a plot, but in reality, it's harder because modern storytelling is nothing like storytelling from 200 years ago. So I did have to come up with a plot. And reading Emma again as research, I'm like, this has no plot, so I needed a plot. So, and then I had to fit all those Emma elements into the plot that I came up with. So I thought it was a lot harder. There's a lot more planning. I couldn't just like turn off everything and just come up with things off the fly.
Yeah, because you
Especially
have
since
to,
I was doing a retelling. It's not inspired by or anything. It's a retelling of that story.
because you really have to tie, you have to give us the Easter eggs. I think that's the part of the magic. And like, I think retellings I know why I'm loving them, which is that comfort, but different. I don't want to reread the same book that I've read 1,000 times. I want to read something different, but I want the comfort of having read, of having it be familiar. And I think that's part of it, but you do have to tie those two things together in a
Yeah.
big way.
Yeah. To tie the comfort but enough to make it recognizable, enough to
Yeah.
make people like I love the reviews I'm seeing that people that didn't realize it was a retelling and they're like, it's got these weird Emma vibes. I was like, that's very funny. Yes, it does.
This is where I admit that I have never read Emma or Pride and Prejudice, but
Oh
I had
no.
delightful Clueless vibes.
Yes. Yeah.
I'm constantly in danger of getting kicked out of the romance club when I admit that I haven't read those two books, and I don't know why. Maybe I'll.
I think it is more Clueless than Emma. I mean, obviously, it's much more of a contemporary story. I mean, Clueless is old now, but obviously, putting things like the modern clothes and everything makes
Oh
me
yeah,
like
the
Emma.
clothes part of it was a big deal. Yeah. His warmth, Rohan's warmth, but wit. And I mean, I know that that's all part of Emma as well, but I was getting real good Paul Rudd sort of energy.
Yeah.
So this is your third adult. You've written 4 published novels. So your fourth book was a YA. Before we started recording, you're working on like 3 other projects.
I've got, I'm working on actually working on 3 projects right now, but there's 2 more that I need to start soon that are on contract that need to be started.
Okay, so my question is, because you're past the debut and you're past the second book. The second book is a whole, in my experience, a whole learning process of its own. Like everything you thought you knew about writing when you're writing the second book goes out the window, and you're like, what do I write this with my elbow? What do I, So what do you feel like with this many books under your belt and in a fairly short period of time, like you've been kind of off to the races for a few years, what do you feel like you've learned about yourself as a writer, and what did this book in particular teach you about writing?
So this book, what have I learned about myself is that I will always doubt myself, and I will always think I don't know what I'm doing, and in the end I always get it done. I'm going through that right now with the book I'm drafting. I've literally just decided to change the entire plot less than a month before it's due because it wasn't working, and I know it wasn't working, and I trust that, but I'm in that point where I'm like, there's no way I can get this done. And then my husband's like, you always get it done.
So is it just a point in time in every process, in every book, that you're like, I don't know what I'm doing? Or is it the whole time?
The whole time. I don't know what I'm doing.
Oh God.
I have no idea what I'm doing. And I think that a lot of that is because I've had so many, like I've had 4 books out, all traditionally published. And my first one was in 2019, which doesn't feel that long ago. And I only started writing in 2016. That's when I started writing fiction. That was seriously not that long ago. And I think the fact that I still very much feel like I'm new. I hear people say, well, I've been trying to get published for 20 years. Or I've been writing since then. I still feel like I'm learning. And I honestly, a lot of times and I know I'm not trying to be like humble or anything, but I honestly feel that the reason my career is doing well is because I'm just in the right place in the right time for the kind of things I want to write. And other people that might not have things go so fast, it could just be timing. But at the same time, I've never stopped feeling like I'm new at this, and I really don't know what I'm doing.
That right place at the right time with the right book is an undeniable part of this industry that is so hard to reconcile, right? Like it's the lightning in a bottle. I mean, there are 1,000 different ways to have a career writing, but being the right book at the right time time. Yeah. So you have literally been struck by lightning, and now you're writing all of these books. And then what did this book teach you? Anything in particular?
So that book was extremely challenging to write. But every book has been very challenging to write. But like I said, it was because of the pandemic. I am very happy with the book. I think it taught me to kind of trust my instincts more than other times, because I was writing a retelling. I was kind of like, no, well, this is how it has to be, instead of going with my instinct. Or no, but this is what happens in Emma, so I have to do it like this, or so it kind of taught me to just trust it. I really honestly thought that this book wouldn't be well received before it came out. And I know everybody thinks that about all their books, and I think that about all my books, but I really thought more than like Accidentally Engaged did so well for me, and reviewers loved it, and it got on all these major lists. I'm like, this one is, the second book in a contract. It just kind of slides in. So I'm like, this is just going to be the slide in. But people have loved it. People have said that it's better than Engaged. And it's shocking to me, because I still think I personally was more comfortable with Engaged when it came out than I was with this one. And it's because I wasn't trusting my instinct that the book was good. I was listening to too many influences. So I think that's what this book has taught me, is to trust my instincts. And I'm having to remind myself that right now because of the ones I'm struggling with.
That's an interesting thing. I mean, I read and loved Accidentally Engaged, but there's something about this one that feels fuller, if that makes sense.
Interesting.
Right? Like I don't know if it's because she has so many deeper relationships with people around her. I don't know if it's the thing with the dad. Like it felt bigger. And not that not that Accidentally Engaged didn't feel big. It was a big book, but this just felt like a complete life. I like it was maybe that was just me as a reader too, in the place where I'm at right now. I have no idea, but
Yeah.
I'd say your instincts really paid off.
Yeah. And I think I feel the same way about it. And I think it's because like I was able to go deeper into her relationships with more than just the one person. Like her father relationship is fleshed out. Her mother, even though her mother's not in the book, is fleshed out.
Yeah,
And maybe using Emma as my stepping stone. I kind of had a direction, and then I could kind of dig
that's
deeper in
true.
that direction.
That's true. So it was funny as I was reading the book, I like the thing I kept thinking about was how important the payoff was in so many of the things you chose as like tropes or tools, in a way that I was like, you are like walking a high wire, lady. It felt so risky, and I don't know. So I'm gonna talk about. I just figured out how to make this a question instead of just being like, so tell me about how you did pay off with but like the setup and the execution, and then the payoff. I mean, that big end of romance feeling that you had to have on like 20 different levels. So let's talk about friends to lovers, right? So
Yeah.
because Rohan and Kamila are clearly friends to lovers, so they have a shared kiss in their past. But like in my eyes, that is the hardest trope, because the
Yeah.
payoff.
Yeah. It is a hard trope. I think in this case it was a little bit easier. I can't imagine writing it again without having Camila's personality to use as my it's almost a crutch. She's flirty with everybody. She's got
Right.
chemistry with literally any person who she's with. So all I had to do was amp it up when Rohan was with her. And I can't imagine if I was writing somebody who wasn't her personality, doing friends to lovers would be a lot harder, I think, because that's just who she is. And then he can be all like when she flirts with everybody, and he can be all like kind of turn red and like be embarrassed by what she says.
And you have all these moments where I mean, we don't ever have his point of view, which I feel like makes the friends to lovers, but he's loved her the whole time, the sweetest pain, right? Like that's the way to juice everything out of that trope. But you have like that she flirts with everybody, so he's kind of able to be like, I don't know, does she like me? I don't know. And then they do have this like romantic moment, and they both like they're kissing, and they're like, we're just emotional and tired. So it's like it's such an incredibly tricky thing to pull off. Okay, so my next one is a character like her. So he actually says to her at one point, "You're selfish," and Jane Austen says about writing Emma, it's in your author note, I'm writing a character that no one but myself will much like.
Yeah.
She is very likable, but she's extra, and she's pushy, and I think he's right, can be selfish. What did you call her? Self-serving?
Yeah, self-absorbed or something.
Yeah.
I don't remember. Yeah.
So
And she is like she's meddling in other people's lives, and her first thought is about how, I don't want to say about how things affect her. She's a very generous person, but she's got a lot of traits that most people are like, oh, okay. Like you can't see deeper into her until you get to know her a bit. And I think especially the meddling into other people's lives is the part. And I mean, Emma was like that too with her matchmaking. I had to make sure it was clear that Kamila does it because she cares about her friends so deeply. She really just wants everybody to be happy, and that's the same thing with her parties. Is she just wants to be that host, that she wants to be the person that everybody thanks for making their life happy.
right.
And it's a lot of it is ego, that she wants to be that person for people, but she also wants that to be the thing that she's known for, is making people around her happy.
So part of the payoff for a character like her is you have to humble her, right? Like you had to have this like this middle section of the book where we kind of learned that she had this awful situation with her mother, and then um, you know, she has this enemy that kind of comes back into her life that really shows that a lot of her confidence is bravado. And I was wondering, was writing her difficult? Did you find yourself clinging to this self-confident character, or did you like rush into the sort of the meat of her and the heartbreak of her? Does that make any sense? Because I feel like that's a character you could write that character for 20 chapters, like being goofy and silly and making these plans and doing these stuff, but then it gets really heartachy.
Yeah. Yeah, and you need to show the reason why she is. Especially with a character that's not necessarily likable, you have to obviously you have to give her humanity early in the book, but I think, I mean, in early drafts of her, I just made her extra, just over the top and maybe more selfish than the finished book, because you just have to throw it all there and then pare it out and tease out what the reasoning behind things are. I always knew when I started writing it that it was going to be some backstory with her mother.
Yeah.
That's something that I always thought was missing with Emma. Is like one thing when watching Emma or reading the book, Emma's father definitely has mental illness, but Emma's mother is absent from it, is not in the story. Emma has her governess and all that. So I didn't want to make an absent, like I wanted her to be raised by her mother, but have a difficult relationship with her, just because that adds that layer of just kind of understanding where she's coming from.
Right. And also the pain of like, that's a relationship she can really never reconcile because her mother's gone.
Yeah.
Right. Like
yeah.
it really,
she can't ever fix it.
Yeah.
And that kind of makes sense for why Kamila is always trying to make everybody happy around her, why she always is. And I also mentioned some parallels that in many ways people look at Kamila and see her mother. She looks like her, and her mother was also like always having parties and a big host and very social. So and I was thinking about how hard it would be to be so much like someone that caused you so much problems, that caused you so much pain when you were growing up.
And the part of herself that she really, really likes, right? Like she loves being the host and she loves having those friends and being that center. Yeah, it's really a compelling conflict that I feel like humanizes her right away. Okay, so another payoff or another setup and payoff is the event that they don't talk about, right? So there's some mystery around what happens with the mom, but then that gets talked about. But the thing like that, she and Rohan never talk about this kiss, and you make us wait for that conversation till like the end of the book. It was how and I am an author and a reader, and my author brain will always be like, just make him have the conversation. But my reader brain's like, delicious. So was that hard for you? Like, did you mean to hold on to it? Did you want to go earlier and your editor was like, no, push it? Like, because that's
I always hold on to things like that. I always have something like some backstory that I just keep for myself and I never say anything. And then my beta readers are like, at some point they need to talk about this thing. So yeah, I specifically didn't. I played with that scene so many times. One of the things that really bothered me with that scene is I had to play with, because I'm a mom, and it was really worrying me that they had this big age difference. So when they're having this scene of them kissing in the past, I'm like, she needs to be legal, obviously. But then how old is he going to be? I was just stressing out so much. So I ended up taking the scene and making it less important to the story because I was worried about that, the squeakiness with the ages. But I actually think that ended up working better for me because that mystery kind of stayed there, and it was just, and I like it added that sexual intimacy or even that tension between them before the story starts, because especially since they're not brother and sister, but they are like he is her sister's brother-in-law,
right.
So there is almost a sibling, and they grew up
They grew up together.
So I was trying to get away from that like brother instinct. I'm like, how do I get away from anyone thinking that there's a brother sister thing here? And then I'm like, easy, just have them make out like 7 years ago or something.
That'll fix it.
That'll fix it.
Okay, so another one that I have is the enemies to friendship with her nemesis that comes back. Like, again, there's a lot of sort of, it's not secrets, it's questions, it's page turning questions that make you get to like, what is the thing that's holding on to that? But and I think this relationship might be why it also feels so much fuller to the story, is because that gets a real moment in my, as a reader. So how was that writing that relationship with Lena?
Yeah, I love that. I loved that relationship. Jana is Jana's the book that I'm struggling with right now is actually Jana's story. So the character is like front of mind and driving me nuts right now, but she's a very interesting character. And I love that idea that, well, I don't love it, I feel sorry for them, but the idea that both of their parents were putting them against each other for their whole lives, that they never had a chance to really see anything in the other than what their parents had been telling them. Like, why can't you get grades as good as her? Why can't you be more social like Kamila? Why can't you get into Harvard like Jana? So that back and forth, you can never look at the person and just see them. All you hear is all the reasons why you look down on yourself, or you think less of yourself because this person is perfect. And both of them had that from each other. And then they kind of discover, like by the end, they have a moment where they realize that that's been happening their whole lives, but they're still very different people.
Yeah,
they're still not really on the same page, but they're getting there. And I think it kind of took both of them getting kind of knocked down a peg. Both of them got knocked down a peg from their so-called perfection for them to see that in the other and see, well, all we have is each other. Like literally, of all their parents and everything and difficulty they were the only ones that had that person in their life.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, I found it to be a very tender, and you're right, it's not like they're best friends now, but they are. I mean, it was a really nuanced relationship, which I dug. Okay, so, and I know that this is, I didn't read your YA. Was that one POV or two? Did you stay in one POV?
One POV, yeah. I have not done two before yet. I'm scared.
Well, so let's talk about one POV, which I thought, again, that friends to lovers, he's loved her the whole time. When she starts to see, when the reader sees it before she sees it, like that's also part of the deliciousness. So this is your choice for your books going forward. You're not writing a dual time or dual POV, or you are?
I am. My I'm trying to think of dates. So my 2024 book will be two POVs.
Are you working
I haven't started writing it. I haven't started writing it yet. I think I have the first two chapters, so I have one chapter of each POV done, but I wrote that a year ago. Eventually I have to start it.
Oh my gosh.
I'll write it this year.
We have a comment here from Allie. I'm loving it. On chapter 15, you write characters that are so easy to fall in love with.
Oh, thank you, Allie.
That's awfully nice, Allie.
She just won. I just sent her that copy. She won it in a draw.
Oh, perfect.
Yes.
Allie's a reader. Like Allie is a serious reader. Okay, one more payoff, setup and payoff. Both the idea of the rom-com, but you set up this puppy prom. Right? Like the puppy prom is approaching like a semi truck the entire time, and you just know like something's gonna go, something's gonna happen. So in writing that, do you feel the pressure of that big scene, or do you like working up to it?
So actually, this is my trusting my instinct. I didn't have anything happen at the puppy prom in my first couple of drafts. Everything went smoothly and everything was fine, and that was the end. And my editor came back to me. She's like, "You've been building up to this prom. Like something needs to go wrong there." But Kamila had been working so hard for it, and I didn't want anything bad to happen on her big day.
Them's the breaks.
So it was after I went through edits with my editor that we added a bit of disaster in the puppy prom. I always knew the puppy prom would be where the big romantic payoff would be. That I knew. But as for all the other stuff that happened during the prom, that wasn't there at first. It was just everything went smoothly.
not the payoff we wanted.
No.
That was a good change by you. Did you I'm not sure where I saw it, Facebook or some social media site, but the dog show where the woman is dressed up, the dog and she are doing Swan Lake. Have you seen
Well,
that?
like I did see that, yes.
I had that in my mind the whole time I was reading it. So let's talk about her father's her father's health in general, but mental health in particular, and the part that played in the book. I mean, again, it just added that real bittersweet tone to it. Were you nervous going in? I mean, you had to address it because it was retelling. Like, talk about that.
Yeah, I was a little bit nervous to write that story. When I was doing my research on it, I mean, I'm always writing about mental health. It's something that I'll always put in my stories. But when I was reading Emma again, I was like, there's no way that like if this was today, this man would have anxiety the way he worries about every single thing. So I decided to, like, instead of just having the worrying dad, I'm like, let's put it on the page that he is diagnosed anxiety. And then I had to kind of think about what does that mean for an older South Asian man?
Yeah.
Like, and I mean, I know some older South Asian women that will go seek help for mental health, but I can't think of any men that would. Um, I mean, the stigma in our community for mental health is still there. It's getting a lot better, but it's still there. But in any community, for a man to seek help, especially in the older generation, um, and so that was kind of hard. I really thought long and hard about how the rest of his community would treat him. Would he be an outcast? How would he treat himself? Would he go seek therapy? Would he go to the doctor? Would he take his meds? And those kind of questions. Um, and I kind of ended up making it so that his closest friend group were all there for him. But then outside of that, it's not something that he ever talked about.
Ever talks about it. Yeah.
Yeah, and of course, Camila tries really hard to take care of him, but he's an older man and he's very old fashioned, and like he won't go to the doctor if Camila's taking him. He'll only go if a man takes him to the doctor. So Rohan has to take him to the doctor for her. And then she just has to, like, guess what happened at the doctor because he won't tell her. And yet she's the only one taking care of him. So I can feel her struggle because she
Yeah.
cared about him so much. But that's very much how the community is.
Yeah. You address this very layered sexism. We'll accept, she's trying to help her father kind of retire. She's taking on these clients as an accountant. Some of them won't even talk to her. Some of them will talk to her if she's not dressed as, if she's not herself, like if she tones it all down a little bit. But you address this very layered sexism that happens, and that it is also coming from her father, but in like a unfixable but loving way. Like, it's a really,
Yeah.
I found that really nuanced. Did that feel like dealing with the sexism that she deals with? Did that feel like you were pounding the same nail, or did it feel like you were, as you were writing it, or did it feel like you were just really painting this whole picture as you were writing it? I ask that because oftentimes as I'm writing something, I'm like, here I go. Here's this thing that I'm going to keep going. And then editing, it changes it. Did you feel that in writing or in editing? Like, how did it manifest?
Yeah, I think that's one of those things that comes out more in editing. My first drafts are very one-dimensional until I add the layers. Like I usually go deeper as to, so I've decided to make her an accountant for reasons. I don't remember where I came up with that reason, but then I go deeper into what does that mean for her to be an accountant? What does it mean for her to be an accountant? The way she dresses, the way she presents herself. Her hair is always big and big and wavy. And she has a TikTok for her dogs. Like, what does that mean if your accountant has a TikTok for their dog? So then I go deeper, and I know what it's like. I know what it's hard for people to take women seriously in these kind of roles. She's working with small businesses that are mostly clients that have come through from her father. So older men. Her father works in healthcare a lot, works with a lot of doctors and things like that. And she comes in with her like high heels and big dresses. And she knows what she's talking about with the financial stuff, but I still had to kind of think about, well, what does it mean? What would it mean for her to be in that role?
Right. And it just kept adding this conflict. And again, that she couldn't quite get that resolution with her dad, because
Yeah.
he's, it was just, I don't know. We're all dealing with our dads in that way, maybe a little bit.
Yeah.
It's
And I think
broken.
and especially in rom-com, there's like a urge to kind of tie everything up in a bow, but she's realistically, she's never going to have her dad sees more of her by the end, and he has faith in her to continue on, but she's never going to be a son to her dad. She's never going to be
Right.
anyone other than the person she is.
Right.
So she's never going to kind of really get him to become a different person and see her differently.
I feel as this book had such bittersweetness to it. Was there ever feedback from your editor that can we make it funnier, like more Rami, more Kami with your Rami? That was
No,
terrible.
actually, I've never heard that about that book. More.
Oh, like
No,
that they just wanted it.
yeah.
Oh, good.
My
So
editor was pretty happy with it, other than the puppy prom issue. Other than that, and we actually with now that I think about it, we ended up pulling out a lot more of the bittersweet stuff more than the comedy. I think
good.
maybe my editor really wanted it balanced, because some of the comedy is so ridiculously silly that it needed that balance of, well, why is she like this? So we brought out a lot of the backstory with Jana, and and even more with her mother. We brought out with my editor.
Well, I have to say that as I read it, it feels very cinematic. So if anybody in Hollywood is listening, quick grab this book. So you've got 20 projects on the go. Can you tell us what comes out next?
Oh, what comes out next is my next YA, and I don't have a date, and I'm not sure no, it's so ridiculous. I can't announce the title. We don't have a cover, and I don't have a date. Actually, I can probably announce the title. I haven't said this to anyone yet, but
Ooh, an exclusive.
we just narrowed down the title, and I don't remember what it is. Oh, it's How to Win a Breakup.
Oh, that's a great
It's good,
title.
right? That's a great title. Yeah, we went through a bunch of them, and I like that. How to Win a Breakup. So it's about a teenage girl who obviously is just had a breakup, and it's kind of like rocked her, like shaken up her whole identity, and she doesn't know who she is anymore because she was with the same guy for 2 years, and that was her whole life. So she does a lot of stupid things, and she ends up getting catfished, and then she finds the guy whose picture the catfisher used, and so she pretends so there's fake dating then. So it's catfishing, fake dating, and then she's a math nerd, and they're all playing this like a video game, like a World of Warcraft type online game. So it's very nerdy. So that'll be out at the end. It's very different from my other YA was flowers and fashion, and this is math and video games and catfishing.
You don't want to make it boring. You want to keep it interesting.
No, keep it interesting. There's a lot
for sure, for
on.
yourself and for your readers. Well, I can't wait. Thanks so much. I know you're a busy lady, and I really appreciate you taking the time to come and chat with us.
Thank you. That was a great chat. I love talking to you.
It's always a good chat with you. Everybody out there, please go pick up this book. Kamila Knows Best. Stay safe. Have a drink. Read a book. Good night, guys.
Bye-bye.